another lesson in the peaceful solution, and today we're going to be talking about self-control and society, okay? Self-control and society, and how it applies to a society, okay? So we learned what? We learned what self-control is with the past few weeks. We learned how to control our emotions. We learned how to control our anger. We even learned how to communicate with self-control. Now we need to learn how self-control affects our society as a whole. Okay? Next slide. But first, I always want to start with review. Okay? We need to make sure that we're still keeping up on our P's and Q's from last week, right? So, first review. What are some influences that can affect your ability to practice self-control? What are some? Think about it for a second. What are some of the influences? TV, movies, songs, friends. I think that's a huge one. Remember last week we talked about how there becomes a desensitization with violence in TV, movies, also with sexual behavior. There becomes this desensitization and this acceptance of this immoral behavior. Okay? Next review. What can you do to practice self-control in the midst of negative influences? Right? Remember, we must react. Remember, recognize whether the influence is positive or negative. Evaluate all your options and make the right choice. Act with positive moral character and consider the consequences and think about the benefits of making the right choice. So react by using self-control to help you make responsible decisions by stopping and recognizing whether the influence is negative or positive. Examining all your options, controlling your emotions, just like we learned a few weeks ago, and taking the time to make the right choice. Okay, so now that we've explored ways in which you can use self-control to improve every aspect of your life, let's take a look at society. What do you see in the news today, right? We can really tell how society has gone when we look into the news today. What you're looking at in the 6 o'clock news: crime, murder, rape, crime, right? But it's important to remember that each and every person, just like we talked about a few weeks ago, has a choice to practice self-control in his or her life. We have a choice to be a benefit to others, to be a benefit to ourselves. And if we want a peaceful society, that's the only way we're going to do it. If we start on the individual level and we change ourselves, practice self-control on the individual level. However, if we fail to practice self-control, the lives of many will be very affected, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get into that. It's not just about us, right? We may think that we're making a decision on our own. This is my decision, ain't nobody else's business. But there's no way that every choice that you make, just like how we talked about a few weeks ago, self-control is a matter of choice, and we need to realize how it affects other people. So today, like I said, you will learn that each individual must consistently, notice I italicized that word consistently, practice self-control if we are to live in a society free from hate, violence, and aggression. Okay? So let's take a closer look at society. What do you think when you hear the word society? What does that bring to your mind when we hear the word society? Right? Well, a society is a group of people with common interests and established patterns. So you might think of, your classroom as a part of the society. You may think your community, your neighborhoods. And on one scale, we can think of the human race as a society because we all share those common interests and established patterns. Okay? Both positive and negative actions can affect how society functions. So that's important to remember. Have you ever seen a pebble, right? A pebble being dropped into a small pond. We all seen the ripple effect. We We all know what the ripple effect is, where you see those circular, once you drop the pebble in, where you see the circles just spreading out. But remember also, when it's, think about this also, that when you drop that pebble in, and those circular, you know, it's going out, it eventually hits the wall, and guess what it does? It starts coming back. Have you ever noticed that? It starts coming back. In the same way, our choices work the same exact way, right? Okay. So that brings me to my next point, that all members of society are interdependent. Okay, so think about it, right? We all depend upon each other. We talked about this before, right? You depend on the person who supplies your clothes, your hottest styles, right? You depend on that person to supply you so you can live great, right? Or you depend on the grocery store to supply you for the food. Similarly, you depend upon the farmers, right, to supply you with, supply the stores with the food you're going to eat, right? We're all interdependent beings, okay? But also remember that we also contribute to society, right? When we keep buying the groceries, when we buy clothes, we're contributing to this economy, right? We're keeping those businesses up and running. We're keeping those services up and running and moving, right? Same way where you need the bus, they ask you to pay a small fee to use the bus. You keep that bus moving with your contribution. So we contribute to the society as well. Same reason why we get educated. You know, we go to school, we go to universities, because we're becoming the leaders of tomorrow, right? I know you don't just go to university for no reason, right? You're doing that to become someone, right? To contribute to society, okay? Okay, so, but stop and think about it. Stop and think about it. Although we are interdependent upon one another, what are some advantages of living within a society? What are some advantages? Well, like I stated earlier, we get our services, right? We are able to be supplied with food, shelter, water, the common things that we need as the benefits and advantage of being a part of a society. We have other people to serve us, right? Okay. But I also want you to think of some disadvantages. What are some disadvantages, right? Well, some of the disadvantages could be that when one person steals from us, it causes a ripple effect. So if someone steals from a store, our prices go up even though we weren't the one who stole, right? Or when someone hurts someone, when someone else is lacking self-control, because remember we talked about how crime is a lack of self-control. When someone lacks that self-control, we suffer for it. That's the disadvantage of being a part of a society. When someone else does not have that positive moral character, we feel it. We feel it. Okay? So, with that being said, that brings me to my next point on how a lack of self-control affects our society. So, now that we have a better understanding of what a society is, right? We can think of basically the human race as a society. One of the ways of determining if people in a society are practicing self-control is to look at crime rates. Look at crime rates in your neighborhood, in your cities. It doesn't even have to be in your neighborhood. That's how we can determine if people in this society are practicing self-control. Right? And it's partly because it hasn't been taught. It hasn't been taught to everyone. Not everybody's learning this peaceful solution. So we do have some who are not practicing the self-control, which is to stop and consider how your actions affect you and someone else. Alright? But it's also important to remember that crime creates problems that affect your quality of life, and I emphasize yours because a lot of times, once again, we seem to think that it doesn't matter what choice I make, it's my responsibility, I'm responsible for myself, and that's not true. We are responsible for ourselves and other people around us, because not every choice you're going to make is going to stay just with you. Okay? So it creates a problem. Crime creates problems that affect your quality of life and the lives of others. Okay? So think about it. Without those who uphold the law, simple things that you now take for granted, like going to the mall, going to school, going to work, right? Going out to eat. Without people who have the self-control, who have regard for the laws, who have regard for their fellow man, right? These activities would become dangerous and life-threatening. Would I be able to go out to the store? Probably somebody would be waiting right there with a gun, right? I mean, it's true. It's occurred before. Things like this have occurred before. Just because they may not have occurred to us in our specific lives, it's occurring every single day, right? All right? We can no longer think that just because I'm in my little bubble here, nothing can touch me or nothing is occurring that threatens my safety. Okay? Alright, society's response to millions of crimes. Society's response to millions of crime. The crime clock puts into perspective society's lack of self-control. The crime clock. What am I talking about when I say crime clock? I'm sorry, it's like a tongue twister. The crime clock is a clock that you can Google online, and it is a clock that shows you every crime that is occurring every second, every millisecond of every day. And let me tell you something. I looked at that crime clock, and the numbers are pretty high, and they keep increasing with each and every single second. Mostly, the crime that keeps increasing the most, I believe, was drunk driving. Drunk driving trips. Okay? So, also, crime, remember what we talked about before, it affects your quality of life, my quality of life. Crime costs you and I many, many valuable tax dollars. Could you imagine how much lower taxes would be if we didn't have prisons, if we didn't have jails, if people were practicing self-control? So think about it. Our tax dollars have to go to paying police officers, right? A lot of people say, forget the police, right? But think about it. We wouldn't even have police if we had self-control. If we had people who are regarding other people's lives and we're making that moral choice, so we can say forget the police, but it's us the reason why we have police, and we need those law enforcement. We have to pay the wardens. We have to pay the prison guards. And I just recently saw a documentary of how much we're actually paying for the health care of aging inmates. The numbers are staggering. How much we are paying for just the health care of those inmates. The ones who, because there's an increasing number of inmates going on what they call lifers, right? And if you grow old in prison, obviously you're going to have issues, and you're going to need Medicare, and you're going to need health care, right? We're paying for that, and we're footing that bill, okay? Does it mean I'm condemning those inmates? Not necessarily, no, but I'm saying that this all, think about it, this all could bring the cost of even something such as our taxes, property loss, right, down if we were a society that was practicing self-control, okay?